Okay, I want to go over these slides associated with the persuasive speaking unit so that you can fill in some of the details and, maybe hopefully understand in a little more depth what it is that we're trying to do with persuasive speaking. So as we've kind of already touched on in making some of the original distinctions between persuasive and informative speaking, for instance, persuasion is the process of influencing other people by really more specifically trying to convince them, not coerce them, right? Convince them to think differently, to believe something different than they believed before you started talking, to maybe even do something once they've heard you give your speech and you've left them kind of with this new impression, of what they should do about some particular thing. The question right off the bat is kind of how much should we try to persuade people? And you might think, okay, well, if you're a really ardent believer in some cause, that you should try to convince your audience, the members of your audience, to believe exactly the thing that you do, with the exact same intensity and fervor. And social science research associated with the tradition of what's called social judgment theory specifically actually sort of counsels the opposite approach in calibrating or just, trying to figure out how much you should try to move your audience from where they are in their beliefs and, action orientations to where you are. Basically, people become often very resistant, actually, to appeals to change, fundamental beliefs or to adopt radically different positions than they already hold. What they're more willing to do, though, is incrementally adjust their positions to accommodate maybe a slight concession. So in a classic instance of this is that proponents of abortion rights often focus less on trying to simply, sort of convert like deeply religious people, who see abortion as, murder or as, this grave sin, from being like staunch defenders of abortion rights. They typically just want to see if they can, often like get people to admit, okay, well, there might still be some exceptions, like such as for, sexual assault or incest related pregnancies, where someone should be able to get an abortion in those extreme circumstances, right? And maybe, they'll come around to that position because it doesn't require abandoning this deeply held moral conviction. It sort of, can be made to actually, people can kind of convince you that maybe it's actually in line with your existing positions, even though, it entails kind of like a slight concession in terms of the policy that you advocate. So that would be like an example of sort of both of these points here, where people kind of need incremental changes. And so the best in order to not experience this kind of like threat to their egos and their conception of who they are. So the best move is, especially if you're dealing with something that people do have deeply held beliefs about, such as, hot button social issues like abortion, the best approach, generally speaking, is to try to persuade incrementally, and or if your topic or the thing that you're advocating is something that people maybe don't really have very strong beliefs about yet, or they're kind of uninformed about, then you do have more room perhaps to persuade them fully to adopt the position that, you sort of is closest to your own that you would truly advocate. Because there's less likely to be this kind of resistance. They're just, simply, they're kind of, they're kind of there for the taking almost, is kind of the idea as far as, what they believe in and what, they might be able to be persuaded to think.